All right, so this is lesson number 2. This is how to use trigonometry to find the side lengths of a right triangle. It is extremely important that you have a calculator. So if you didn't download the software already, go ahead and download it. It'll look like this. All right, it's free and it's through Texas Instruments, and you can actually download it for iPads as well. It's not going to look exactly the same, but at least you will be able to do the trig portion. You could use your iPhone calculator, but I strongly suggest that you download this free software, okay? So once you download the software, please make sure you're in degree mode. You see right here it says radian. You want to make sure that that's in degree mode. So you would hit, you go home, you go to menu, you go to settings, document settings, change float 6 to just say float, and then change angle to say degree. Extremely important. All right, we're going to go to OK. Go back to a document, and you notice here it says degree now. Okay, that's what you want it to say. You don't want it to say radian. That's extremely important when doing trigonometry. It'll produce a different answer. Just like inches and feet are 2 different ways to measure length, degrees and radians are 2 different ways to measure angles. All right, so I'm going to go back to the lesson here. All right, so you're going to look at the triangle. Now, remember, trigonometry is only used for right triangles. So if you don't have a right triangle, you're not even thinking trig. All right, so you're going to look at the right triangle. You're going to determine which acute angle to stand at. All right, so you don't have to label it, but I'm just going to discuss it this way. So you're either going to stand at angle A or at angle C. You're never going to stand at angle B because that's the right angle. All right, one of them will have a number in it. So for example, if I have a 20 here, okay, I'm going to be standing in that 20. Then you're going to have 2 of the 3 sides with something there. So for example, I could put an X there and a 7 there. Random numbers. All right, so then you're going to determine based on where you're standing. So again, because this is the acute angle they gave me, that's where you're going to stand. You're going to look at what these 2 sides are with respect to where you're standing. So if I'm standing at 20, that X is the opposite side. And no matter where I'm standing in this triangle, that 7 is the hypotenuse. So if I'm going to be using the opposite in the hypotenuse, I'm going to be using the trig function sine. So it's important that you look at the triangle and determine what trig function you're going to be using. Then, of course, you're going to set up the ratio, and then this is the new part. Okay, this is the new part that I'm going to be teaching you today. This was from the previous lesson. So just a reminder, okay, sine of the acute angle, you're going to put the measurement of the angle here, is equal to the opposite side over the hypotenuse. Cosine of the acute angle is equal to the adjacent side over the hypotenuse, and tangent of the acute angle is equal to the opposite side over the adjacent. So that's SOHCAHTOA, which we learned in the previous lesson. All right, so let's go down and see what's going on over here. Okay, so I have 2 different scenarios here. Okay, 2 different scenarios when solving for a side using trig. First one is when the unknown is in the numerator. All right, so let's discuss that. So you have a right triangle. Okay, we have a right triangle. They gave us this 28 degrees. So that 28 degrees is the angle we're going to be standing at. When I'm standing at 28 degrees, whoops, the X is the opposite side. The 19, no matter what, is the hypotenuse. So the trig function we're going to be using here is sine. I'll write the acronym here, SOHCAHTOA. And if I have the opposite and the hypotenuse, that means I'm using sine. So the template would be sine of the angle is equal to opposite over hypotenuse. You're going to fill in that information. So in this spot here, we'll go the 28 because the angle always goes there. The opposite side was X, and the hypotenuse is 19. So now with that information, you're going to cross multiply. Now, different people do this differently. This is my suggestion. I would put this over 1, and now I cross multiply like I would any other proportion. So X times 1 is X, And I strongly, strongly, strongly suggest that when you cross multiply this, you take this 19 and you put it in front of the word sine 28. Okay, that is my strong suggestion. This way, when you put it into your calculator, you're going to be multiplying the 19 by the sine of 28. So x is already alone. We're going to drop down the x is equal to, and you're going to plug this all into your calculator. So I'm going to go back into my calculator. I'm going to type in 19, and then you hit the trig function. You pick sine, and it was 28 degrees. Okay, my calculator is the CAS, so it doesn't give me the decimal unless I convert it to a decimal. So there you go, 8.9199. All right, it's set to the nearest hundredth. So 8.9199 to the nearest hundredth is going to be 8.92. So that'll be our answer for this problem, 8.92. Now, this next part is a little bit different, as you'll see in 1 second. Okay, so again, x, the unknown, is going to end up in the denominator. And this is why. I'm going to write the acronym SOHCAHTOA here on the side so that we could figure out which one to use. We always stand at the acute angle, so here we are at 33. We determine where we are based on where we're standing. So if I go like this, the 15 is my opposite side. The x is the hypotenuse because it's across from the right angle. So again, we are going to be using sine, but when I set up my ratio, it's going to be a little bit different when I cross multiply. So it's going to be the sine of the angle is equal to opposite over hypotenuse. Here's my template. Inside the first box next to the word sine always goes your acute angle, which in this case is 33. The side opposite is 15 over the hypotenuse, which is x. Okay, I'm going to put this over 1, and we're going to cross multiply like we did before. However, if you notice, the x now is going to go with the sine. So the way I'm going to ask you to write that is x sine of 33 is equal to 15 times 1, which is 15. Now, unlike over here, when x was already alone, here x is not alone. So to get x alone, you would divide by the sine of 33. Whatever you do to one side, you need to do to the other. All right, so that's going to go away, leaving you with x. All right, and then you're going to plug this all into your calculator the way you see it. So 15 over sine of 23, control division, 15. Then in the bottom, sine, so you hit the trig button, sine of 33. Okay, control enter will get me a decimal, so 27.54. That would be our value for x. All right, so the big thing to remember here is set up your ratios, cross multiply. When x is in the numerator, you're already done. You just plug this into your calculator. But when x is in your denominator, when you cross multiply, you're going to have to remember to divide. Okay, so the way I remember it is when x is in the denominator, you're going to have to divide. Oops. All right. All right, so let's try a bunch of examples. All right, here we go. So the directions are to solve to the nearest hundredth. We always pretend to be standing at the acute angle, and then we need to determine what these two are depending on where I'm standing. So if I'm at 21, over here would be the opposite. We don't have it, we don't need it, so we're not going to take it into account. Right here, these two sides are theoretically both adjacent to me, except this one right here is the hypotenuse because it's across from the right angle, which means this is the adjacent side to me because I'm standing at 21. So I'll just write the trig ratio over here at the top, SOHCAHTOA, based on these two values here, we're going to be using the a and the h. So that means we're using cosine. Cosine of the angle equals adjacent over hypotenuse. So the angle here is 21. The adjacent side is x, and the hypotenuse is 26. I'm going to put this over 1 and cross multiply. All right, so it looks like x is in the numerator, so this is going to be an easier one. X times 1 is x. And then the way to rewrite this is put the whole number 26 in front of the word cosine and then the angle 21. So that means x is going to be equal to, plug that into your calculator, 26 cosine 21. 26 cosine of 21. To the nearest hundredth, that's going to be 24.27. All right, number 2. The acute angle is 43. Over here would be the opposite. Don't have it, don't need it. These two are the adjacent, but this one is the hypotenuse because it's across from the right angle, which means 36 is going to be our adjacent. So again, a and h means it's cosine. Cosine of blank equals blank over blank. First blank is your angle, 43. Numerator is your your adjacent, which is 36, over your hypotenuse, which is x. Whoopsie daisy. Sorry. All right, so again, when we cross multiply, make a mental note, x is in the denominator, so we're gonna have to divide. So when I cross multiply, it'll be x equals, x cosine 43 equals 36 times 1, which is 36. To get x alone, we divide by cosine of 43. And then we put that whole fraction in our calculator. 36 over cosine 43. Control division, 36 over cosine, oh my goodness, of 43. So that's 49.22. Okay, next one. Acute angle is 55. Directly on the opposite side is x. And then these two sides are my adjacent, which means 8 is my adjacent. So using O and A together is tangent. So tangent of blank equals opposite over adjacent. The angle is 55. The opposite side is x. The adjacent side is 8. Cross multiply. X is in the numerator, which means this is going to be one step. X times 1 is x. And then we rewrite it as 8 in front of the word tangent of 55. 8 tangent 55. So that gives us, well, that's 88. 8 tangent 55. Which is 11.43. Next, 72 is, 72 is the angle. Be careful here. Okay. 72 is the angle. This over here is the hypotenuse because it's across from the right angle, which means this 25 is opposite and this x is adjacent. So again, it's tangent. It's tangent because we have the opposite, we need the adjacent. There's no mention of the hypotenuse here. So inside the first box, 72. Opposite is 25. adjacent is x. X is in the denominator, so we're going to have to divide. We rewrite this as x tangent of 72 is equal to 25 times 1, which is 25. We need to divide by the tangent of 72 to get x alone. So x is going to be equal to control division 25 over the tangent of 72. Whoa, that's the exact answer. This is the rounded answer. So 25 over tangent 72 is 8.12. 8.12. All right, 2 more. Stand at the acute angle. These are my 2 arms from that acute angle. However, this one's the hypotenuse because it's across from the right angle. This one's right next to me, therefore it's the adjacent. So again, I'll write it here so we don't have to scroll up. Anytime we use the adjacent and the hypotenuse together at once, it's cosine. Cosine of blank equals blank over blank. Cosine of the acute angle, 37, is equal to adjacent, which is 48, over hypotenuse, which is x. Cross multiply. X is going to be in the denominator, so we have to make sure we divide it after we multiply. 48 times 1 is 48. So x equals 48 over cosine of 37. Control division, 48 over the cosine of 37. I'm going to put a decimal in there so it gives me a decimal answer right away. 60.10. Now let's just think about this for a second. If x is the hypotenuse, you know it has to be the longest side, which means it's got to be bigger than 48. So 60 luckily is, which means our answer makes sense. All right, last one. Here we are at 24, the acute angle. The x is opposite from me. And these 2 are my arms. However, if this is the right angle, the 9 is the hypotenuse. So if we're using the opposite and the hypotenuse, that is sine. Sine of the angle equals opposite over hypotenuse. The angle is 24. The opposite side is x. The hypotenuse is 9. To solve for a side, we cross multiply. X times 1 is x. 9 times the sine of 24, we write like this. X is already alone, unlike here where it was not. Therefore, x is equal to 9 times sine of 24. 9 trig sine 24. 3.66. All right, so there you have it. Let's just go back to the front page and review what we are supposed to do. So look at the triangle they give you. Stand at the acute angle. Determine which trig function you're going to use and set up a ratio using one of these 3 templates. Then you're going to cross multiply. After you cross multiply, pay attention to where your x is. If x is in the denominator, after you cross multiply, you're going to have to divide.